I want to welcome everybody to our session today where we talk about the emotional intelligence and how we blend that in with the behavioral intelligence. And we have two great presenters with us today, Joel Bauman from Duquesne University and Bob Longmire from Longmire and Company. And we have a great show for us today. So I want to make sure that we go ahead and put the slideshow up for us. There we go. And when we talk about the convergence of everything, what we're here today to talk about is the enrollment marketing leaders face an uphill battle. And that uphill battle is this. We all know about the cliff that's coming with regarding the population. We know that there's more competition than ever before as well. But everything's kind of changed since COVID as well. So it's making sure that we take our steps forward to make sure that we make every interaction count when we're doing the recruitment of prospective students. Enrollment management has turned both to an art and a science. We're using data every day to make sure that we have all of the important decisions that we can make about spend, about how we interact with students. But there's that art piece of it too, where we create relationships, and we're really going to get into that today with Bob. And what's the best way for you to leverage both emotional and behavioral data? We're going to talk about that, and finally, what's the best practice in measuring and evaluating your messaging today? So we talk about the enrollment roller coaster, and I have a great graphic here. It just talks about how a student walks through this process and how they walk in and out of different ways they're interacting with you. But it's an up and downhill battle, and sometimes it takes 8, 10, 15 times to even make contact with a student. But how are you delivering different messages at different times to make sure that that student is receiving the information that they need, not necessarily what you want them to see, but what they need to help make their decisions? So a lot of times you'll see students do online search, and then you back that up with an email, or maybe you've purchased their name and you're sending out email and print and things like that. But this is a process that goes through this. And one thing that Bob brought up earlier today, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later, is process. Are we relying more on processes, or are we relying a little bit more, or need to be relying a little bit more on how we interact with folks as well? So when we come together right now, and I was thinking about that song, Come Together, of course, and then Joel broke in the song, and everybody started singing, and we got through that whole piece during our practice. But there's a convergence of two sets of information. You have the behavioral intelligence that captures on a day-to-day basis, and then emotional intelligence that Bob's company with Longmire and Company brings together, and how Joel in the middle takes all of that information and then enables his counselors. And I think that's the most important thing, is how he enables his counselors to make sure that they are making the right connections with the right students at the right time to help them navigate that process so that they're making the best decision for them, which in turn will make the best decision for the institution as they move through and enroll. So a little bit about Longmire. We're going to turn it over to Bob here in a second, but they're located in Kansas City, and Bob has been doing a lot of different things for the higher ed area for a very long time. And Bob, I was a fan when I was seated for 25 years, always getting involved with the co-sponsored studies and stuff like that. We're going to talk about some of that stuff today, but Bob, and I know Joel will attest to this too, we have used Longmire's information on the emotional side of recruiting to help us formulate our brand. So, Bob, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit more about what you do and how we can talk about these co-sponsored studies together.
Well, the first thing is that I'm heartened that Joel's car is not moving, and I'm also really heartened that you're not behind the wheel, Joel. That could be dangerous.
I can only multitask so much.
Yeah, well, good. We have a long history in higher ed. If you're unfamiliar with Longmire and Company, we believe that the conversations between colleges and the students that they're trying to recruit can be much richer and more fruitful for both. Because when that happens, both sides are better served. The student is put into the right college. The college knows that student and what they can do for them. So this is the list of things that we do that I'm not going to bore you with. Chris, do you have control over
I have control.
All right, good.
So as we move through, Bob, when we talk about this study, we're going to talk a little bit about the results of the study. You had more than 6,000 prospective students take participate in this study about emotional intelligence, but it was really, the purpose was to isolate and respond to the variety of stresses and anxiety that students are having every day. So what made you think about, why did you want to study that particular that concept this time?
Just because of what we observed, the types of conversations that prospective students are having with counselors or others on campus. That could be faculty, it could be other students, it doesn't make any difference. And so we wanted to really understand what they were thinking, and more importantly, what were they feeling? People buy what you do because it makes them feel good. There's lots of different ways and lots that you can buy a car on, the exact same car, but you may prefer going to a specific dealership because they make you feel like you're going to be well treated. They have coffee in the waiting room. They, whatever it is that they do, they set themselves apart. And colleges do, in many cases, do that. And in some cases, they kind of fall down doing that. And one of the things that where colleges can help themselves is by making the process less stressful for students. Every year we do, among other things, we do what we call co-sponsored studies. We'll get 40, 50 colleges involved, and we'll say, we're studying this topic. And so why don't you jump in? We're going to survey your pool of students for the upcoming class, and we're going to compare it to those of other colleges that we're involved with these studies that we do, or that particular study. And one of the studies was all about how they feel about their college selection process and going through the process. And you'll see here on this particular slide, the question on that was, and I'm going to read it to you. The question on that was, how much do you think colleges attempt to reduce student stress during the college selection decision? And then, when you look at the word cloud, the biggest word that comes up there, which is most oftenly used, is information. And so we were saying, okay, well, what do they mean by information? So then we can dive down into that and say, what is it that they're saying? And let me just read you a couple of examples to give you a sense of what we found in that particular study and what it means in terms of our interactions with specific students. We asked, what do colleges do that causes student stress during the college selection process? And here's a couple of things. I'll just read three of the things that they say, that are kind of representative of what we see in the thousands of people who answered that question. They say a lot of their websites really make you dig for information, which can lead to stress by not finding out what you need to know. Another person said, a lot offer the same vague information that doesn't set them apart from others when they are paying that much money. You want to know clearly where and for what it is going to. Somebody else said they're bombarding us with emails. We saw that a lot, just in bombarding them with information. And so a lot of the things that we're doing actually causes stress, even though we don't want to cause them stress. And if you could go to the next slide.
Sure.
We also wanted to ask on the reverse side of that, if these are things that colleges are doing that stresses you out, what helps you? What relieves that stress? And you can see here that how did colleges alleviate stress? They asked me questions. And very much, we know that this, when we're recruiting students and managing millions and millions of records of students, it's really easy to start pulling back and start making decisions completely based upon the data that you see. But the thing about it is that people buy because they feel good about something, and they enroll in colleges because they'll say, I felt at home there. Everybody that I saw was like me, those types of things. And one of the first things that they said in terms of how can we alleviate stress is they want us to ask questions of them. They want us to probe to find out what it is that we need and how they can help. Why don't you advance to the next slide and let's just take a look at the presence of stress in the college selection process. We asked, as you can read here, how often did you experience stress and anxiety during the college selection process? And you can see here that it's a big number. 70% of students said that they either were stressed always or frequently stressed out. And the thing about it is that whose job is it to reduce that stress? The student doesn't know how to do it, so we have to do it. And so we have to find out everything that we can do for a particular student to help reduce the amount of stress that they're feeling. And every student is different. Well, you can do that. You can do that by surveying them, for example. There's many ways to do it, talking to them, having conversations with counselors, and so on and so forth. But making the effort to try to understand how Mary is feeling or how John is feeling, and what is it that they need that I can do to help them is extremely beneficial to them. And when that happens, they begin to see the institution in a different light. And now they're not so much stressed out. Now they're looking at things to do. They're looking at other people on campus, and they're getting to know the campus. So, and then go to the next slide, if you would, Chris.
Sure.
We asked, what was your overall stress level during your college selection process? And we can see here that 63% say that they are either in a state of medium stress or high stress. As a matter of fact, those two numbers were about equal. 32% said medium, 31% said somewhat high. And so what is it we do with that? What we do is that we engage them, and we can say, picking a college is a stressful process. You've got distance, you've got the money issue, you've got where are my friends, all of these other things are so stressed out. I always advise colleges to survey them, talk to students, have focus groups, and so on and so forth, where they can understand what's causing student stress and anxiety. And as a matter of fact, we do workshops on that, where we teach counselors how to have better, richer conversations with students. And it's kind of interesting. Most colleges don't do that as much as they should. And we have an exercise where and I'll keep it short, Chris, I promise, but it's instructive. We have groups of tables when we're, working with a college. And there's 3 people at each table. One plays the counselor, one plays the student, and the other plays the, did I say admission counselor already? It's an admission counselor, current student, and an observer.
Right.
And this is what we ask them to do. They say, okay, we say, we're going to give you 15 minutes. And your role as a counselor is to spend 10 minutes doing nothing but asking questions of that prospective students, probing what it is that they want, asking them where else are they thinking about going to college, what are their fears, what are their aspirations, and you have to do that for 10 minutes. And basically, on average, the average counselor can only ask questions for about 90 seconds. Then they run out of questions. And at the end of the workshop that we do, we teach them how to keep doing that and answering probing questions. And they can do that after they practice and learn some skills. They can spend 10 full minutes doing nothing but asking students a student specific question. And I would try the home game.
Right.
If you're an admission counselor and you've got a director of admissions, the director of admissions, go ahead and get 3 people, and ask them to go through that process. See how long your people can ask questions and probe to find out what really it is that's driving that student's college selection decision.
Right. I think that's an important point, Bob, is to create those relationships, but also to be able to identify what is important to that student, so that you're not wasting their time or your time at the same time. And I know that, Joel and I have been in charge of onboarding counselors for a number of years, and trying to get them to take that next step instead of just checkbox, getting test score names and stuff like that. What a great exercise that is, Bob, to talk about. So when we talk about parents, and yesterday, Laura Rudolph from Transy talked about communication with parents. Obviously, you asked the same question of this: characterize your parents' level of stress during your college selection process. And just like students, it appears that just like students, parents are having issues as well.
They are, because many of them have never gone through the process before. And they love you for it, because it generates a richer conversation, and one that we can help them. You can't help everybody, but when we help them, they appreciate it, and it sets us apart.
So I think one of the things that we talked about, and you just kind of touched upon it, Bob, talking about the extra training, is how much colleges attempt to understand prospective student stress. And there are some that are really good out there. Obviously, I'm assuming that Duquesne does really well at this, to be recognized by Scott Jasick yesterday as one of the best around. I think they do a really good job at that. But, it appears that we're just trying to fill out a card or something like that to get extra data, but we're not really doing anything to understand prospective student stress at all, are we?
Well, it's the technology that we have now is so great that you can, I know you do this, Chris, you can pinpoint this and look and see what television show somebody's watching.
Right.
And that's great, because that gives you insight into the student. What is it that they want? What might I be able to send them that gets them interested in our institution? But what I'm recommending is that, yes, do all of those fantastic things. They're great. But also, you've got to come down to, there's an emotional level at some point where you have to communicate with somebody based upon what it is that they want to see and they hear. And a lot of that very often is just through human interaction.
So when you talk about the end of the study, one of the things we talk about is, do colleges seriously consider talk to you about stress? 21% said yes, which was, a pretty low percentage, I thought. But what was even stood out more to me was the fact that it was the admissions counselor. 60% of the interaction about stress with that prospective student was done with the admissions counselor, and maybe not somebody who was seasoned in being that conduit of professionalism and helping reduce that stress. But we're also not using our current students as much as well, because only 54% said that they actually spoke with a our current student anyway, to get through that process. Bob, what do you really take away from these two numbers here?
That we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
The percentage of people who as I said earlier, want to talk about themselves. They're happy to do it, and we can engage them and enable them to do that, and understand what it is that is going to be most attractive to a prospective student or group of students.
Right.
It's kind of disheartening, though, who said, and the way we asked that question was, did the colleges you seriously consider talk about your stress, which was the previous slide? And that was 21%, which is too low, because hopefully we'd be talking to 80% of students with in-depth conversation about what we can do for them and what it is that they want and need in a college. And that could be done electronically, by the way. You have a big database of students, and there are ways, obviously, to modify surveys so that you can get at what it is that they want and use that information to better serve them, which is really what it's all about. So anyway, the bottom line is really just to understand who it is that you're talking with, and whether it's in mass or on an individual basis and find ways that you can communicate with them, that you can provide them the information that they need, and hopefully serve them better.
Right. So when we talk about mission, and Joel, here's where we're going to talk about Duquesne. Finding out that mission and message and mission and putting it all together, I think is an important thing. And Rajiv's program just before this one, he talked about volume and how we still are buying 500, 600, 700,000 names, but are we buying those because we have to, or are we buying those because we don't know any better kinds of situations? So, Joel, let's talk a little bit about Duquesne, and I'll turn it over to you, and I'll just drive.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and great to see you, Bob. And like you, Chris, Bob and I have worked together in a couple of different contexts and over the years, and it happens to fit pretty well with adapting the technology to treating students as individuals and learning more about them as opposed to just segment in the funnel. So a little bit about Duquesne, Parklight campus, right in downtown, beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, vibrant Pittsburgh, founded in 1878, Catholic mission and spirit and identity, and finding out more about the students and their individual needs and potential and their aspirations led to the research that produced the "It's Time for Bigger Goals" tagline, and finding what they do best and where they're best, where their future is best, and how we can help them is right there baked into the mission of the institution. A lot of exciting things happening, 80 programs, undergraduate programs, 9 schools, and a new proposed college of osteopathic medicine coming along as a way of understanding our context. In our particular area, the context is dire. It is not breaking news for folks to know the Northeast, Middle Atlantic states and the Midwest demographics are not trending in the best direction. So this is where the publics are at, and we have not been immune. And so we've had to do some things to turn this around. And the next slide. And so our approach at this point was seeing what we're seeing in the context, knowing what our mission is, which is to provide personalized information, personalized support to students. Students are at the pole star of the decisions we make as an institution, and thinking about how to do that ahead of when students apply, because the research shows only 3 out of 10 students will ever change the order of schools when they apply. And so we need to have a wider funnel, whether that's through demand generating programs, osteopathic medicine, or through building the funnel in various ways. So that's job one in our new enrollment plan: generate and grow demand, and increase the pool of qualified applicants who see Duquesne University as their first choice school before they ever apply. And so that means gathering information, surveying students, understanding more about them and their contexts and their needs and their stresses, long before the application, as the expanded inquiry card, as some people use an application. And so that's our approach: inquiry management, prospect management, guide and direct those that are most likely or most desirable to apply and enroll. And then we have various techniques early in the funnel to manage those students into the admissions process. So interactivity scores, how interactive is a student, not just blasting out the emails and the collateral, surveying, behavior-based and demonstrated interest scores, and not just the quantity of behavior, but also the timing, when they're doing it and how they're doing it. So to allow the algorithm to build, to allow the technology to support communications based on their activities and based on their interests, but also to then respond to, and the training that Bob provides and we did for our counselors as well, which is to feel, felt, found. It allows us to say, I'm hearing you feel this way. Many of our students have felt this way, and it's of course organized around what we know about their particular interests or their points of pain or stress, and we found and offer a solution. And so the next slide, I think, will go a little bit into the everybody's favorite funnel statistics, if you're in this game. And we had been fairly flat in the admit pool, had a nice 70% admit rate, pretty consistent high 20s yield rate, and that, of course, exacerbated by COVID. So that's been a downward trend. And so, again, job one is increase the funnel, increase conversions from inquiries to applicants, make sure we're first choice to see that yield trend turn around in the future. And the way we do that is combining, the next slide, please,
Oh, sure.
dynamic and personalized content based on a student journey. And this is based on student journeys, through the website and through the technology. And so these are some samples of campaigns we run and a pop-up that we, toaster ad that we produce based on the algorithm in the system to their behaviors. And it's changed. So it's not just what they do, it's when they do it. So we know whether they're a prospect, whether they're an inquiry, whether they're an applicant or an admit. So based on all that information, they get this information that is customized to where they are in the journey with a robust set of information, gauges, and results that we can track daily, weekly, and at the end of the cycle so that we can make adjustments. And those, you see the results on the bottom. Each and every application through the funnel, each and every interaction through the funnel is measured, and then we're feeding distinct messages based on that information. So here's another set of information all through the funnel. A is you can see our location. You can see excitement and affinity building. We know a lot of our students are interested in are socially minded, and so it's important for us always to show groups of students engaging. And fast is our orientation, some orientation. So we're trying to drive people to make sure to join us on campus. Each, as you may have heard on other segments, each of our counselors has a set of filters that they can go in and understand where their individual students are in the journey. And on the right, you can see we can gauge quickly what their engagement score is, what their lifetime affinity index score is, and then where in the website, where they're visiting and when on the right-hand side. And then we take all that information, all the algorithmic information, all the contents that's pushed out by design, and then put in what Bob had talked about, which is now that we know the student, how does a counselor then personally interact and show that personal attention that we think is distinctive about Duquesne and in our mission. And so these are examples of what we call arsenal items. Many of them, these are going to be print that we can put with a personal note, handwritten, and then put in the mail. And so not only the student, but the family knows, the parents can see it arrive and know we're taking the time to do a personal outreach. And these are designed to answer what is in the individual survey that resulted in the national numbers that Bob showed us. We have which individual questions, which stressors for every student is. We see what their behavior is. We ask the questions, and then the counselor will take that and say, oh, this student is interested in social life and academics. And so the study abroad flyer might be a good item to send to them. Another one might be interested in student government and social life. And so they sent them about an evening fundraiser with student government and with another handwritten note. Next slide. Excitement is another component. While there's stress, excitement is also, and that was another study I did with Bob. How do you build excitement and a feeling of excitement through the process that is so daunting and transactional? And so we tried, here's an example of our moot court team winning and building excitement that way. And so you could see what that looked like, and a note from Gabby to that student. We've got an emotional intelligence university writing center. It does two things. A, we have a writing center to support your concerns about writing, and it's in the community. We also have our tutors in the community helping community members in the underserved areas improve their writing. And so it serves two purposes. One, community engagement, doing good in the world, as well as knowing there's support for any academic skills you might be lacking. And then, in fact, the last item is what the wellness team hands out to entering freshmen during the semester, and talks about journaling as a way to reduce stress. And so this counselor knew the student was interested in these areas, had some concerns about how much writing and what support systems there were for non-academic life. And so she just put in, again, handwritten note, how to do journaling. So this student is prepared and now knows she has affinity. She knows when she steps on campus, this is available, and she's going to participate in this activity. And I think I will end there because you can see from what I just described, the full flow from the beginning, from the top of the funnel, behavioral intelligence and emotional intelligence, knowing what the trigger points are based on research and conversations with students, and then a personal response. And I will leave, and that we hope, again, higher conversions throughout each step of the funnel.
And at the end here, because we're getting close to our time, I think one of the things that really comes together is you'll see that Joel and his team at Duquesne have really taken the advantage of the marketing automation that is offered through Capture, being able to build those messages based upon Bob's research with those students to find out where that anxiety is, where that stress is, and to alleviate that. One of the last questions that had come up was, what was the best technique to deliver potentially stressful information without overwhelming a prospective student? I think really it goes back to making sure that you're prepared to deliver that in different ways. Thanks for the question, Matthew. I think it's being able to deliver that information where the student is and how the student is typically interacting with you. So whether that's through your admissions counselor staff or whether that's working out with some of your other automated communication. So it just really depends on that. So this is the end for us, gentlemen. Bob, Joel, thank you so very much. Great information. Here's some contact information for us. But if you guys want to reach out to us, we can talk more about this. But again, gentlemen, thank you so very much. Joel, safe travels. And Bob, say hi to Kansas City for us. And don't eat too much barbecue this weekend. I'm jealous.